Everyone, Arthur Gaming here, and I'm sitting down for a 10-question interview, Dungeons and Dragons style, with the man himself, Chris Sims. I'm sure if you don't know him, you probably should, as he's written a whole bunch of D&D stuff, and maybe the name will strike a chord with you once you realize that he's written a bunch of stuff. So say hi, Chris, and etc.
Hi, Chris, and etc. No. How's it going? I'm
It's
happy to be
going
here.
good. Yeah, definitely. We'll do a little 10 questions. As I said, nothing really complicated. There are no wrong answers. Uh, but just we'll ask you a little bit about your D&D experiences and stuff, and we'll see what your answers come out to be. There's been some interesting answers so far, so we'll see how yours compare to some of the others.
And I will
Um,
be great. I will also be grading your questions.
oh, excellent, perfect. Well, if they're not good, I blame it on my wife because she made me write most of them. So if they're not good, we'll just blame it on her. So,
Okay, whatever you said,
all
man.
right. and the first question, and this one I find interesting because I know I have issues with this myself. So maybe we'll see how you do this. What is your process when you're naming a character?
My process when I'm naming a character. Are you talking about an NPC or a player character?
Either one. Either one. How do you come up with names? Names seem to be what most people tell me they have a really hard time with. Is coming up with a name.
I don't see. I've been doing this so long that it's hard to actually believe that I have a process. It's like often names just come to me, or there's some element of the past in them.
Mm-hmm.
But I also steal names from foreign languages. Like I'll come up with a like this sorceress is an autumnal sorceress, so I'll get a Welsh word that means autumn or something like that.
Yep, I'm good.
That type of thing. Uh, or it's usually what the character is that inspires me to name the character. Like
Right.
my druid that I played in a long time campaign um, was born an orphan. So her name was Imogen, which just means girl, um, and that's what the druids named her. And then it just other times it's if something sounds good when it is said along with what I want to say. Like one of my favorite halfling rogues is named Rugen Nimblespur, but that's because I like to say Rugen Nimblespur, gentleman adventurer at your service, you know, that type of thing. So
Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right.
or Rugen, yeah.
So you play in my Riverbreak game, and
Mhm.
your guy's name is Korbog. Is that did you come up with Korbog through some naming process like that, or was that just to come up
It,
with
it was
something?
it was kind of like that. I kind of named it after a character that was in a game that I played in. So he was an NPC that my a DM created for a game that I played in a long time ago. It was probably like 1994-ish, something like that. And he had a character that was half orc named Gorbog.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's kind of an homage to that, but the Ghost Hammer. It's also because it sounds kind of cool to just say Korbog the Ghost Hammer,
Yeah, 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 yeah. No,
So
I definitely dig it. It's a really good name, so I'm digging it. I know probably one of my favorite names, and this wasn't for a D&D game, but a friend of mine back in the early '90s, we were playing a champion superhero game, and his superhero he played like a detective superhero, and he was Justin Case.
yeah,
So that would be his thing. He'd say to everybody, "Call me, just in case."
yeah.
That was one of my. I always liked it like that. I thought that was a great use of puns and names and all that kind of stuff. Good. Okay. All right.
I'm also not afraid to just use a name generator and let it inspire me. I very very rarely use what the name generator gives me, but it will inspire me. I often will pick or randomly determine two letters and then get something from the fantasy name generator that starts with those letters and then but change it. So, I mean, I've been naming characters forever.
Yeah.
I'm almost 50 years old and I've been playing D&D since I was 10 years old and DMing most of the time. So I had to
Yeah.
name all the NPCs and stuff like that. So, and if you read a lot, you get a lot of names too, like,
Yeah.
from fantasy novels and stuff like that. So I guess it's actually one of those things that gets easier with practice, I think.
I still have a hard time, and I've been playing. I think you and I are about the same age. I'm 48. How old are you?
I'm 48.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And I've been playing since I was 10. So you and I have been playing for about the same length of time. And I still find it hard. I don't know. Names are. But I do a similar thing that you do. I go online. I maybe do a name generator and get some inspiration. Or I'm a big fan of going to Google Translate and translating things into some weirdo language that's
Right.
different than English that doesn't, makes a completely different name for you. And
Finnish is really good.
Finnish is good.
Yeah.
I tend to do Latin a lot, but English is so based on Latin, it kind of pulls a really close word over, so it gets a little too on the head sometimes. But I do like it too. So
I think that people also self-edit too much. Like they get nervous about what they're going to name somebody, or they reject the first thing that they see without allowing that thing to inspire them further. Like
hmm
the instead of letting something kind of flow through you a little bit and inspire you. Uh, well, actually, what I'm trying to say is let it flow through you and inspire you instead of rejecting it because it's
yeah,
dumb from the outset.
yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to name somebody Oodle or something like that, but you can. I mean, that might be a great name
Oh
though
no, Oodle
for
could be good. Oodle could be really good.
Oodle could be really good for more than one type of character. So,
Yeah, yeah. All right. So second question: what is your most memorable critical success?
my most memorable critical success. I don't know, man. Let's see. I I don't play enough to have a lot of memories of critical success. Ah, I know one. It just came to me.
See.
So my DM let me play a gun wielding paladin. So she had two guns, and we ended up in this giant statue that I just knew that it would animate somehow. And I forget what was happening though, which makes the story worse. But I apologize for that. But for some reason, we were in its ear. So it's the statue is big enough that we were in a passage in its ear, right? And there's an eardrum there. So I'm like, boom, and I rolled a 20 on one of the guns, and I decided to smite. And of course, I mean that's the paladin's thing, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
uh, my that did not make the statue happy, to say
No,
the least.
really? Are you
And
sure?
it didn't kill it because statues don't have brains. So, and even if it did, I mean, a tiny little bullet
Yeah,
going.
yeah.
But that was pretty funny. I mean, I don't remember any spectacular critical hits. Um,
I think that one's pretty
from from
good. I mean,
from DMing though, most of my critical hits are cringeworthy because it usually resulted in somebody dying. So
yeah, exactly.
I remember running a game where this giant that was a servant of these elemental forces attacked the party and trapped them in the area with it. With a tornado that basically surrounded the battlefield, so they couldn't run away, and it did that on purpose because it intended to kill them, right? I mean,
Right. That's
and
the goal. Yeah.
this was fourth edition, kids, where of course people can't be killed. So, and
No.
also Paragon in fourth edition. So this giant hits my brother-in-law's character, and uh, it was a critical, and I just start rattling off the damage, and he goes, "Okay, so I'm dead." I said, "Oh, you're at 0 hit points." He said, "No, I'm just dead." Like, "Oh, okay, I guess you're dead." I mean, and unfortunately, I did a similar thing to one of my friend's characters. He had joined a fourth edition game again, and it was the first round of the first fight, and the bad guy chose him as the target, and a critical,
Yeah.
and then his poor character was dead. Both of those ended up being really cool stories, though, in the end. So
Yeah.
that was okay. I mean, the death itself wasn't a cool story, but what grew out of it. In one case, one of the characters was a reincarnated archangel um, whose soul had been shattered.
Ooh.
And what my brother-in-law said after his character died is that he wanted his character to be part of that character's soul. So when she died, the spiritual essence rejoined with that other character and explained some of the new powers that he got.
Nice.
So,
Very cool.
and in the other case, they were already going to speak to a very powerful sorceress for uh, because they were suspicious that she had some history with the local ruler, and they wanted to find out about it. And she offered to bring the dead character back to life as long as she could put them all under a geisha.
Mm,
So they had to do what she needed them to do, which was a good. She actually wanted them to do a good thing, but she wanted to make sure that they did it.
yeah, yeah.
So, so he got brought back to life in a pretty cool story way.
Yeah, fourth edition. Speaking of fourth, I mean, I got wrecked in fourth edition a bunch. Dan Masucci, our inked mage, our one of our players, he was the
Mhm.
DM, and I'm telling you, his dice hate my guts. Like his dice critted me so many times. Like every session, at least once, I get this wicked crit on me. I eventually end up getting the adamantine armor, so I was immune to criticals because it was just like I'm like he's killing me. Like I'm not literally killing me, but almost killing me. Like every time I played them, it was vicious,
Al-
vicious.
Although, I mean, I like that Korbog has adamantine armor, but when I looked at the power of the adamantine armor, I said that's mechanically really good.
It is really
Like
good.
to be immune to criticals, but it kind of makes me feel a little too safe.
Yeah.
Like it's like well, what I mean is like sometimes when you get critted as a player, something interesting happens, right?
hmm
Something interesting happens to your character,
Yeah.
and or it triggers something interesting in it, and so taking that out of play, it's one of the reasons why I don't like immunities, especially on player characters. It just takes something out of the game. That thing is useless against your character. That therefore
Right.
that story can't be told,
Right.
right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I get you. I completely agree with you. Okay, we're gonna flip that coin over now. What's your most memorable failure?
Most memorable failure. These are hard, Art.
I didn't say they were
Uh,
gonna be easy questions. I told you blame my wife. It's all her fault.
I mean, failure.
Yeah. You could take it any way. It could be a natural one kind of failure, or I had other people say how they felt as a failure as a DM after something happened. Um, whichever interpretation you want to go
Oh,
with it.
okay, got it. Um, hmm. See, I don't find failure that interesting usually, so I forget about it. Um, let's see.
See, I think see for me for my son, he plays with us, and I find that when something a failure happens, it actually makes the story more interesting. Kind of like you're saying, where if you're not immune to something, where something happens to you, then it makes the story more interesting. You know, like I think he has more interesting stories of times that he's tried to do something and failed to do it than he has stories of succeeding on things. You know, as far as the stories go.
Well, I mean, I can remember a long time in the same game that Gorbog, the inspiration for Gorbog, came from. Uh, one of my character's major drives, he was a fighter from Waterdeep. Um, one of my character's major drives was to avenge a friend that he had lost to this bandit gang. I mean, to this thieves guild, basically. I think it was called the Red Sashes. I'm not sure, but that became a major driving force in that character because he early in the game he was trying to protect his friends from these guys, and he hadn't done anything to annoy the Red Sashes. It's just that his friends like owed them money or something. I mean, it's and and despite how I attempted to protect them, they all got killed.
Oof.
So one of my character's major drives, and one of the things that the DM did in that game was we traced the Red Sashes all the way to their source. Uh, I think it was in from Waterdeep all the way to Kalimshan in the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah.
Found their founding headquarters, went in there and just annihilated them down to the last person, and found the person. And there was some kind of undead creature that had supposedly founded them in this campaign, and we did away with that guy too. So
Nice.
it was a pretty satisfying through line that was from not succeeding at something earlier in the
Right.
game,
Right.
not succeeding at protecting your friends.
Yeah.
So at 14th level, I'm like, finally, you are all avenged,
Yeah.
that type of thing.
Yeah.
So
Well, see that's a good story from a failure. You know
yeah,
that works out good. Um, all right, next one is what is your most memorable character death?
my most memorable character death. Quite frankly, my most memorable character death is my first character death. and that is when I first started playing Dungeons and Dragons. I've told this story several times. It was on a weekend where we went to a friend's house, and they introduced us to D&D, and I think we probably slept like 4 hours the whole weekend. We were
Done
just
that.
playing. We were just playing and playing and playing. But the first character I made was, and I've said this before too, but the first character I made was an elf, and I didn't name him. I didn't name him because I couldn't come up with a name. And
See, naming is hard.
naming is hard, especially for a 10-year-old who hasn't read any fantasy or done anything like that yet in his life. So, but I saw the elf class in the basic D&D book, and I was like, swords and magic, yes. And but we went to the caves of chaos and ended up in the caves where there are owlbears and gray oozes and all kinds of stuff like that. After the owlbears had were done trashing us, we decided to go deeper anyway. That was not a very good idea. So I got killed by gray oozes.
Oh, nice.
I got killed by gray oozes in I think cave 33, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, gray uses
But
are nasty.
and I also remember that the DM, who was an older guy, he was probably a teenager. Um, he was very very cruel about hit points. So if you got down to really low hit points, he would inflict this kind of you're so wounded that you're just crawling along, that type of thing. And so my elf was crawling along away from gray oozes and did not survive.
Couldn't even outcrawl the ooze. You were that wounded.
Yeah, I was like, yeah. And I think I was
That's
the last one alive too, so I was like, let's just get this over with and make new characters and start over.
Start over again. Yeah. Yepper. All right. All right. Tell me about your favorite character of all time.
My favorite character of all time. Favorite character of all time. It doesn't have to be mine, right?
No.
That makes it harder. Uh, it's a favorite D&D character, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say that I love Minsk, but especially in. Have you ever played the Baldur's Gate isometric game?
Yeah.
Uh, have you ever seen Minsk react? So Minsk has a favorite enemy of gnolls,
Okay.
and in that game, and if the witch that he's with, Dynahair, dies, he has a great line where he goes, "Dynahair, no!" But I had that happen in this Knoll fortress that's in that game, and when that happened, he said, "Dynahair, no!" And the little readout at the bottom says, "Minsk goes berserk." I didn't make that happen, and he starts running through the thing on his own, just mincemeating these gnolls, and he survived the whole place. And
Nice.
killed everything in it. I'm standing at the steps going, what is going on? I'm trying to scroll around the screen to keep up with him. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess we're done here. Let's
Nice.
just collect the treasure. But
That's good.
one of my favorite personal characters is Rugen Nimblespur, who was I can't remember the subclass name. It's in fifth edition. I mean, I played him in other versions of D&D, but in is it Inquisitive? I think it's Inquisitive.
Yes, and for the rogue.
Rogue Inquisitive.
Yep, the rogue inquisitive. Yep.
Yeah, and he was just a lot of fun because I pictured him as a miniaturized Hugh Jackman
Mm-hmm.
with Wolverine chops, and the cigar habit, and he was just loads of fun to play because I always give my rogues high charisma too. So he's a mouthy little jerk that knows what he's doing. Right. So it's just fun. I like playing instigator characters sometimes. I mean, you see that when I'm playing Korbog. Like sometimes I'm just like, I open the door.
Right.
Everybody's like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? I open the door.
Yeah.
So it's fun to play an instigator, but it's also fun to play somebody who's mouthy that is very capable of getting themselves out of trouble. Because like with a rogue, you can like, okay, bonus action, disengage, bye sucker.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it was just fun to imagine this little guy that was just like, you and me are going to have a disagreement, that type of thing. So
nice. Very good. Okay. All right. That's a good one. All right, so you and I both grew up in the '80s and played D&D from the start. Obviously, we've been talking about that. When I grew up, my gaming group was a bunch of white dudes sitting around a table, who are now a bunch of old white dudes that sit around a table. What is your regular gaming group like?
I don't have a regular gaming group right now, unless you count Riverbreak.
Okay.
Um, it's been hard to maintain one because I've moved around, and then I went to Europe,
Right.
and the people I used to play with in Austria, they live in Vienna, and I haven't really started back up again. Um, Although I'd like to. Uh, they were my previous regular gaming group in Seattle was um, my friend Robert and a few other people, Zach, but uh, a guy named Zach and his wife, and just a couple other people. Nothing
Yeah.
spectacular.
Yeah.
Actually, I'd like to mention though that one of the interesting things that happened in Europe with that gaming group, which was actually split half and half, men and women, which made it very interesting. But
Hmm.
I also had to play that game in German,
Oh, really?
and I'm not fluent in German. So what I did was I created a character that his native language was not common. So I had an excuse to mess up the language while we were at the table. So and when people say, well, what is your native language? Oh, deep speech. They'd be
Yeah.
like, what? So it was this half orc warlock guy whose native language was deep speech, and also I described all of my spell effects were like tentacles and stuff like that. So nobody liked this guy, and everybody was like, but it gave me a way to learn German in that context, but it also gave me an excuse to speak German badly while playing. So that was kind of cool.
That's good too. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because and this kind of plays into this next question is, what is the most diverse gaming group that you've ever played in? Um, would that be your Austrian group with the half and half men and women?
Probably not. I've played in pretty. I mean, playing in conventions makes it easy to get a pretty diverse table.
That's true.
Um, you know, I've played with very diverse group, men, women, different types of people. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not, and it's always fun because gamers know how to have fun together
yeah.
if you just treat each other right and try to have fun.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's one of the things that, like I've said to other people, that I really like about fifth edition is because it has become as popular as it has, and it's becoming, again, me and you, right, cut from the same cloth. And when it wasn't really socially acceptable to be playing Dungeons and Dragons back when you and I were playing, So
mhm.
as it's become more of a thing, we're seeing more of an influx of non-white people, of non-straight people, of non-men playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm totally digging it because the game is different when you play with someone who's not of the same background as you are. Like, those
Mhm.
people other than you play completely differently sometimes, and it's very interesting to see how different people do it. You know.
Yep. And when I was much younger, my uh, when I lived in Richmond, Virginia, my gaming group was pretty diverse too. So
Yeah. Nice.
with different people,
Yeah.
you know,
Very good. Very good. All right. What's the largest group that you've played D&D with?
played D&D with. I don't know. It's probably close to 10 people. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
let's see. How many people were there when we first started playing that day? I think that there was like the first time we played. I think there were like 8 people.
Mm-hmm.
One DM and 7 other kids. Um, Now, if we don't limit it to D&D, I can go higher than that. But yeah, I think the biggest group I played with is around 8 to 10 people for
Mm-hmm.
D&D. With other games, I ran a game in Austria for something called Art Week in the Museums Quarter,
Mm-hmm.
and when I ran that game, I think at least 15 people played,
Wow.
and uh, many more spectated.
Yeah.
So
Nice. Nice.
that was, but that was a kind of game where a person would come up and say, "Can I play? I can't. I can only play for 10 minutes." I'd say, "Sure, make a character." And I mean, this game was the type that a character could appear and then disappear.
Right.
So it was fine. But that was a really cool experience, though, allowing that many people to play and to have that much player churn during an ongoing game.
Right. Right.
So it's a very unusual experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. All right. Last two questions here. First one is, what is your favorite spell and why?
What is my favorite spell? Hmm. I don't. My One of my favorite spells. It's gonna sound lame, but is Gust of Wind.
I love Gust of Wind.
Gust of Wind is so good. And it's so underutilized. Most people look at it and say, "What? You just blow wind down a? What are you doing with the wind? You can do all kinds of
Yeah.
things with Gust of
You can
Wind."
do all sorts of stuff with Gust of Wind. I love Gust of Wind.
Gust of Wind is on like my druid definitely Gust of Wind, and I'm looking for a chance to use that spell. Push somebody off a cliff, done. Keep the ogre at the end of the hall while everybody runs, done. Blow the vapors away from all of us, and so we don't have stinking cloud around us anymore, done. That type of thing. So, oh, the Lich wants to cast Cloud Kill, tough. That type of thing. I mean, it's a second level spell that can counter Cloud Kill.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so it's Gust of Wind is one of my favorite spells. I think it's one of the most underutilized and overlooked spells in the game.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I've even seen it used of you hit the vampire to vapor, and then one guy stands behind him with a bag of holding, and you gust of wind him into the bag of holding.
yeah, there's so. I mean,
He's done then. Where he doesn't get back to his coffin, he's dead.
yeah, and that's one of the really magical things about D&D period is that some of these spells, you look at them and you go, "What would I use that for?" Like,
What was Gary
when you
thinking?
figure it out, like when you figure what lock that key fits into,
Yeah.
it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really love Gust of Wind.
That's a good one. That's it. No one said that one yet. That's a good one for sure. I also like it. It's good. All right, last question in the same vein. What is your favorite magic item, and why is it the decanter of endless water? I mean, why? Why?
And why is it the decanter of endless water?
I love the decanter of endless water, but
Well, I mean, the alchemy jug is hard to overlook as well.
yeah,
But
that's
that's only because Mayo is on the list.
Mayo is on the list. Mayo is on the list.
Well, and I can tell you a story about that
Yeah, go for it.
because Jeremy Crawford was editing the magic items, and I don't remember. It was probably Rob Schwab who said it should be able to pour out mayo. And Jeremy
Of course.
Jeremy gets this evil cackle that he gets sometimes and goes, "Done." That rounds out the random list.
I'm not surprised Robert Schwab came up with that. I am not surprised at that at all.
It could have just been inspired by the spirit of Robert Schwab. I mean, whom we all know, and one of the first things you think of when you think of Robert Schwab is mayonnaise.
Yeah.
So but my real favorite magic item, I don't know. It's hard to say. I think one of my favorite magic items is one I made up. But do I have to do one that's in?
No, whatever you want.
So I had this player one time, and he played this cocky swordsman, and he was the kind of guy that would let his sword do his talking for him in almost every situation. It wasn't so bad as you meet this guy on the road and I attack him with my sword. It wasn't that bad, but it wasn't far off. So I invented this sword that I've actually used in several ways in different campaigns since then. But when I first invented it, the history of the sword was that there was a big war between elves and other species, and this sword had existed for a long time and fought in many, many wars before that. And its owner fell in that war and died and was never recovered. So when the characters were exploring, they found the sword in this kind of weird place. Like, why is the sword here in this cavern with this flowstone encrusted skeleton? Like that type of thing. So, but the sword was tired of fighting. It was tired of killing. It was a sentient sword. It was tired of killing people. It was tired of being used in war. It didn't have any problem killing monsters,
Right.
but and I forget what I named it, some Elvish name, probably stolen from Tolkien's Sindarin language. But anyway, the translation was Sword of Blood Sorrows. Um, and this guy, of course, took the sword, but its drawback was that if you use it to kill another human being or another sapient creature, not like a monster or something like that, um, that you would feel the pain and the sorrow that you caused by taking that life. And so, but I would narrate that in the game,
Right.
and the player didn't feel punished by it. He actually thought it was awesome and started role playing, leaning on his sword and like weeping after battle and stuff like that. And it did temper his behavior. Like he
Yeah.
changed his character based on that behavior. I changed the name of the sword because Sword of Blood Sorrows is kind of a mouthful to just to Lamenter,
Yeah.
the Lamenter.
The Elementer. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the last time somebody found the Lamenter in a game, they picked the sword up and they saw the old name fade out of the fuller, and Lamenter appeared while they were holding it. So they don't know the sword's original name. It changed its name while they were looking at it. Um, and but I love magic items that change the story.
Yeah.
Um, to me, that's what they're for. A +1 sword is cool and all, but what's its story?
Right.
What was it used for? Why did somebody enchant this sword? How did it end up where it is in the game?
Yeah.
That type of thing.
Yeah, I think for me too. I'd rather have a game full of, even if it's just a sword that does, instead of being like a +1 sword, if it's just a magical sword that does like 1 extra point of fire damage, it, to me is a lot more interesting than a +1 sword. Like some sort of flavor to it that does, why it's that way. It's made out of, obsidian or something, so it's it's volcanic in nature or something, and adds something minor to it that just, to me, again, yeah, same I think makes it a much more interesting item to incorporate into the game, really.
Yeah, and then that sword that does 1 point of fire damage is really useful against trolls. I mean,
Great. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
so
Or lots of things. Yeah. Yeah.
mhm.
Good. All right. But we'll see. You survived my 10 questions. Wasn't
Was
that
that
bad?
hard?
Was it? Was it?
It,
Was it bad?
no, no, it was bad.
Were the
It's
question? How'd you grade us on the questions? Were the how were the questions?
I'd say A-.
Okay. I don't have to like throw the wife out or anything. She can stay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. Good.
I just made up A-. I don't know.
But anyway, Chris, thanks for doing this quick little interview. Want to let people know where they can find you?
I'm at Chris S. Sims on Twitter. That's the best place to interact with me, probably.
Good, perfect. All right, and then as usual, everybody, I'm at the Arthur of Gaming on the Instagram and on YouTube as well. Tomorrow, actually, I'm going to see Chris in about 15 hours or so, and we're going to play play our game of Riverbreak on Twitch TV / Vorpal Board, and also as you can see, I'm using the Vorpal Board software, so go check those guys out. This stuff is great for playing board games, role playing games, etc. So overall, it's great, and everybody, especially during this really weird time in the world, let's stay safe out there. Thanks.
Yes, please. See you later.